The night the sky broke, Elena Rivers was standing on the balcony of her small apartment holding a cup of tea that had already gone cold. She had always loved the stars, silent, eternal, scattered like jewels across the heavens. But that night they did not look eternal. They looked alive, moving, rearranging themselves as if some invisible hand had touched them. At first the world thought it was another meteor shower. Children pointed upward, lovers held hands, and people filmed the strange lights dancing across the atmosphere. But then the lights stopped moving. They hung in the blackness, perfect rows, cold, deliberate. It was not nature. It was not beauty. It was a fleet. Elena's tea slipped from her fingers and shattered on the balcony tiles. She didn't even hear it break. She could only whisper, "They're here." Across the ocean, in the command room of Earth's United Defense Network, Commander Daniel Hale watched the same sky through the eyes of 1,000 satellites. His face was carved in stone, his voice low but steady. They are not drifting. They are positioning. Every nation prepare. The world had always argued, fought, and doubted. Yet in that single night, when the stars themselves became ships, humanity remembered its unity. The aliens made no introduction. No words, no demands, no signal of peace or warning, only silence, deep and suffocating, until the first thunder came. An energy blast that struck the Pacific, boiling water into steam. Waves rolling outward like the earth itself had groaned. Elena saw it on her screen, saw cities on the coastline trembling. She thought of her brother, Isaac, who was stationed at a naval base near Hawaii. She called, but the network was already overloaded with millions of desperate voices. The silence that answered her was worse than any explosion. Daniel Hale issued the first global order. Hold. Do not fire. We must know what they want. But the invaders didn't wait for diplomacy. They descended in columns of silver fire, striking not only military bases but also power stations, communication hubs, even libraries and hospitals. It was not conquest, it was erasure, and yet humanity did not fall silent. In the streets of shattered cities, strangers pulled one another from rubble. In the skies, pilots rose to fight, though they knew their jets were fragile against alien craft. On the ground, engineers and scientists whispered plans in candlelit basements. Humanity was bleeding, but it was not surrendering. Elena joined her neighbors in an underground shelter as tremors shook the earth above. Children cried, old men prayed, and yet someone began to sing. A soft, trembling voice that grew steadier as others joined in. For the first time in hours, fear bent to something stronger. Defiance. In his war room, Daniel Hale clenched his fists. He had served for 30 years, prepared for wars of men. Not for something like this. But when his aides asked, "Commander, what chance do we have?" he did not hesitate. The same chance we always had. We are human. That is enough. Outside, the sky burned with alien light. A reminder that the invaders had chosen Earth believing it would be simple prey. They did not yet know the truth. The last battle they never saw coming had just begun. The morning after the first strikes was not truly morning. The sun rose, but the smoke of fallen cities dimmed its light. Streets once filled with laughter now echoed with the groans of broken concrete and the searching cries of those who had lost everything. Elena Rivers moved carefully through the wreckage of her city. Her shelter had survived the night, but above ground was another story. Buildings leaned like broken teeth, cars were scattered as if by a giant's hand, and the air was filled with a bitter tang of ozone from the alien blasts. She wasn't searching for food or clothing. She was searching for Isaac, her brother, her only family. Every step she took was driven by his name echoing in her chest. The military announced that survivors of the Pacific strike were being evacuated to central bases, but details were unclear. Hope clung to her like a thread of light in the dark. She would not let go. Far away, Commander Daniel Hale sat in a chamber deep beneath the United Earth Defense Command. Maps of destruction glowed across the walls. The aliens were not simply attacking, they were choosing. Every strike was precise, aimed at centers of human knowledge, coordination, and memory. It was not war in the traditional sense. It was as if the invaders wanted to erase the story of humanity itself. Daniel addressed his council, his voice firm despite the fatigue in his eyes. They do not negotiate. They do not speak, but they underestimate us. Humanity has always been underestimated, by nature, by time, by ourselves. And every time we rise, A young scientist named Mira Chen leaned forward, her hands trembling with urgency. "Commander, their technology is centuries beyond ours. We can't face them ship to ship, not yet. But maybe—" She hesitated, then continued. "Maybe we can outthink them. If they've studied us enough to strike our memory, then they believe knowledge is our weapon. What they don't realize is, our spirit is too." Daniel gave a rare smile, tired but true. Then spirit becomes strategy. Elena reached a ruined hospital by nightfall. The walls were scorched, the windows shattered. She pressed her hand to her chest, whispering a prayer, though she had never been a praying woman. Inside, she found survivors, nurses with torn uniforms, doctors working by flashlight, and patients lying quietly on stretchers made from doors. One nurse stopped her. "You're not hurt. Why are you here?" "My brother," Elena said, her voice breaking. "Naval Base, Hawaii." The nurse's eyes softened. "We've seen lists coming through. Many were evacuated inland. Don't lose hope." It was a fragile comfort, but it was enough to keep Elena moving. She began helping in the hospital, carrying water, holding the hands of the injured. In those broken hours, she realized something. The aliens could destroy buildings, but they could not destroy kindness. And kindness was spreading like a hidden fire, carried by every survivor who chose to help another. In orbit, the alien fleet reformed, silent and perfect. They had crushed worlds before. Daniel knew that much from the fragments intercepted in alien code. Yet Earth was different. Earth fought not only with weapons, but with stubbornness, with memory, with small acts of love that refused to vanish. The invaders did not understand yet, but they would. Daniel stood over the glowing map, his hand steady as he placed a marker over a vulnerable city. "We can't meet them in the sky, but we can make this planet our shield. Every street, every mountain, every human heart, this is our battlefield. If they came to erase us, then let us become unforgettable." And as night spread again over a world in ruin, both Elena and Daniel, two lives far apart, unaware of one another, felt the same quiet truth burning within them. The battle was only beginning, but so was humanity. The third week of invasion brought no surrender, yet also no victory. The alien fleet hung in orbit like a ceiling of metal stars, their shadows crawling over Earth with cold indifference. To many, it seemed hopeless. Cities still smoldered, communication lines were fractured, and nations whispered their doubts in silence. But beneath the ashes, humanity began to kindle something the invaders could not see. A hidden fire. Elena Rivers had traveled hundreds of miles from her ruined city, carried along with other survivors in a convoy of battered trucks. Every face around her was pale with exhaustion, yet their eyes still searched the horizon. People clung to the smallest rumors, that resistance cells were forming in the mountains, that engineers had salvaged alien wreckage, that perhaps, just perhaps, a counterstrike was possible. In one quiet camp, Elena met Mira Chen. The young scientist had left the safety of the command center to join field operations, determined to test an idea that no one else dared risk. Elena, now hardened by weeks of survival, volunteered to help. She needed purpose beyond her endless search for Isaac. Mira's plan was simple in thought, impossible in execution. Use human unpredictability as a weapon. Alien ships moved with mathematical precision, every strike calculated, every formation flawless. But perfection had a weakness, it could not imagine chaos. "Elena," Mira said one night, huddled near a fire, "machines understand order. They don't understand sacrifice, improvisation, or why someone would risk everything just to save a stranger. If we can show them the cost of ignoring that, maybe we can blind them even for a moment." Elena studied her, and in that moment, Mira's gaze hardened. "We strike!" Commander Daniel Hale listened to their reports with grim approval. The resistance needed courage, but it also needed symbols, living proof that humans were not yet broken. Mira's team could be one of those symbols. In his own chamber, Daniel fought another battle, not against aliens, but against despair. His officers carried endless lists, cities lost, families torn apart, names of the fallen. Sometimes alone, Daniel read them aloud in the quiet, as if to remind himself they were not just numbers but people who had dreamed, laughed, and lived. He whispered to the darkness, "If they came to erase our story, then I'll be the one to keep telling it." In the mountains of Europe, Elena and Mira's group carried out their first act of defiance. Using scavenged transmitters, they hijacked a frequency and broadcast across the continent. Not words of surrender, but music, a single violin played by a soldier whose hands trembled from battle yet still remembered beauty. The sound carried through broken radios, through cracked speakers, through the silence of hiding places where children listened with wide eyes. For a moment, Earth remembered it was more than war. It was life. The aliens reacted with confusion. Surveillance drones hovered, scanning for the source, but the humans had already moved. Mira smiled fiercely. We are unpredictable. That is our weapon, but unpredictability came at a cost. The aliens struck harder, angrier, focusing on areas where resistance was rumored. Villages burned and more lives were lost. Elena saw it with her own eyes, the price of defiance carved in fire. She wept that night alone under a broken roof. She thought of Isaac, her brother, and wondered if he was still alive or just another name on Daniel's endless lists. She nearly gave in to despair, until she saw a child clutching a violin case saved from the ruins of the last camp. The child looked at her with steady eyes and said, "If they hear us play again, they'll know we're still here." Elena wiped her tears. Humanity's fire might be hidden, but it was alive, and she would not let it die. Above Earth, the alien commanders observed. They had crushed many species, broken empires, silenced worlds. But this one, this human world, did not act as expected. It did not shatter cleanly under pressure. Instead, it fractured and flared like glass. Each shard cutting in a different direction, it unsettled them. For the first time in countless conquests, the invaders hesitated, and hesitation was all humanity needed. Snow fell silently over the mountains where the resistance hid, its white veil disguising both the scars of war and the restless fires of rebellion. Beneath a cave lit by flickering lanterns, Mira Chen's hands trembled over alien fragments spread across the stone floor. Pieces of silver metal, circuits that pulsed faintly like veins of light, wreckage salvaged from a downed drone. Elena Rivers sat across from her, watching. She had grown leaner, harder, but her eyes still carried that unyielding ember of hope. "Can you make it work?" she asked quietly. Mira exhaled. "Not in the way they built it, but maybe in the way we think." She explained her plan. Hack the alien code, twist their own machines against them. Not to destroy fleets, that was impossible, but to blind their surveillance, to sow cracks in their flawless order. Elena nodded. "Then we'll give them something they don't expect." Commander Daniel Hale stood in a war bunker, surrounded by world leaders whose faces glowed pale under emergency lights. His voice carried the weight of their last gamble. "We have reports from Mira Chen's cell. They believe they can hijack alien drones. If they succeed, we'll have our first strike. If they fail..." He did not finish. Everyone in the room already knew what failure meant. One leader whispered, "Do you believe it's possible?" Daniel's jaw tightened. "I believe in them, and that has to be enough." The mission began on a frozen night. Elena, Mira, and a handful of fighters carried the salvaged fragments up the slopes to an abandoned observatory. Its dome was cracked, its telescope shattered, but its high ground made it the perfect place to call the heavens. They worked in silence, breath steaming in the icy air. Every moment carried the taste of danger. Alien patrols swept the skies, their engines humming like thunder in the distance. Finally, Mira connected the last wire, her eyes fierce with exhaustion and hope. "Ready," Elena placed her hand over hers. "Then let's show them who we are." The signal pulsed upward, a human-made chaos folded into alien code. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the sky shivered. A swarm of drones overhead froze, their formation faltering. One by one they turned, not toward the humans, but against each other. Sparks tore across the sky as alien machines clashed, blinded and betrayed by the very order they had trusted. For the first time since the invasion began, Earth struck back. Cheers erupted inside the observatory, voices echoing through the cold dome. Elena's throat tightened as tears burned her eyes. For weeks they had known only fear and loss, but now they had proof. The invaders could bleed. The victory spread like wildfire. Across radios and whispered networks, news carried. Humans had turned alien machines against themselves. Survivors in ruined cities lifted their heads. Soldiers in trenches gripped their weapons tighter. Children in shelters smiled for the first time in weeks, but victory came with a price. The aliens responded with fury. Hours after the strike, beams of silver fire rained upon the mountains. Forests burned, villages crumbled, and the observatory itself became a ruin of glass and stone. Many fighters fell. Elena and Mira survived by inches, dragged through snow and smoke by comrades who refused to let them die. Elena coughed blood but refused to let go of Mira's arm. "We showed them," she whispered hoarsely. "We showed them." In the command bunker, Daniel Hale received the report. Losses heavy, location destroyed, survivors scattered. But still, his lips pressed into a hard line of pride. "They gave us proof," he said. "Proof we can fight. Proof we can win." For the first time, the council looked at him not with despair but with fire in their eyes. Humanity had bared its teeth. Above the earth, the alien commanders analyzed the anomaly. A world they had expected to erase in silence now burned with resistance. The precision of their conquest was unraveling. Thread by unpredictable thread, one commander hissed in their cold, wordless language. "This species does not break as others do." And in that moment, though they did not know it, the invaders felt something new, something they had never accounted for: doubt. The ruins of the observatory still smoked when Elena Rivers opened her eyes. Her body ached, her ribs burned, but she was alive. Snow drifted down through broken beams, covering the ash like a shroud. Mira Chen knelt beside her, bandaging a wound with hands that trembled more from relief than fear. "You're not allowed to die," Mira whispered fiercely. "Not until we finish this." Elena smiled weakly. "Then you'd better keep me busy." Far below the mountains, survivors streamed through valleys and cities, carrying with them the story of what had happened. They spoke not only of machines that turned against themselves, but of a group of humans who dared to rise when everything seemed lost. The story spread like wind over fire. In villages where people hid in silence, they began to sing again. In cities where the weak had been left behind, neighbors carried one another through the rubble. Across continents, flags long divided now flew side by side, not as nations, but as humanity. For the first time in generations, Earth remembered it was one people. Commander Daniel Hale stood before the council, his presence tall and unyielding. Around him, the faces of leaders glowed with cautious hope. "We are no longer victims," he declared. The strike in the mountains was not just a battle, it was a message. "The invaders know now that we are not prey. We are predators when cornered." A murmur ran through the chamber. One leader leaned forward, her voice steady. "Then we must prepare for more. Not just strikes, but a war unlike any we have ever fought." Daniel's eyes hardened. "Yes, a war of memory, of spirit, of fire. And to win it, we must be one." In a small underground shelter, Elena and Mira worked side by side. Mira studied the salvaged circuits she had saved, sketching frantic diagrams on scraps of paper. Elena helped where she could. Though her skill was not in machines, but in people, she kept morale alive, comforting children, organizing supplies, reminding every survivor that they still had a reason to fight. One night, as they shared a blanket near the embers of a fire, Elena whispered, "I used to be afraid of the dark, but now I think I love it, because every time the dark comes, someone lights a fire." Mira looked at her, her eyes softening in the glow. "You're one of those fires, Elena. You remind people why we're still standing." Elena laughed quietly. "And you're the one building weapons out of shadows." For a brief moment, the war faded. They were not soldiers or survivors, but simply two humans finding strength in one another's presence. But outside, the world raged. The aliens responded with increasing ferocity, tightening their grip, sending heavier ships into the skies. Cities burned brighter, skies grew darker. Yet even as destruction spread, resistance multiplied. Fighters launched guerrilla attacks in jungles, deserts, and frozen seas. Scientists dug into wreckage, peeling back layers of alien technology with stubborn curiosity. Artists painted on the walls of ruins, declaring with color what words could not. The invaders could destroy buildings, but not defiance. And defiance was everywhere. In orbit, the alien commanders held their silent councils. Their fleets had never failed. Their order had never bent. But the humans did not follow the pattern of other species. Every strike against them seemed to awaken something deeper, something untamed. One commander sent a thought across their shared network. This world resists beyond logic. They sacrifice, they burn, and still they rise. Their weakness is their strength. For the first time in countless campaigns, the fleet considered retreat. But pride chained them to their conquest. To leave now would admit that they had been defied, and so they tightened their hold, not realizing that every act of oppression only sharpened the blade of human resolve. On the ground, Elena lifted her face to the sky one night, the alien ships glowing faintly above. She whispered into the cold air as if Isaac could hear her across the distance. "We're coming back. All of us, and when we do, they'll never forget who we are." The world had changed, not in weeks or months, but in the span of fire and shadow. Nations once divided by politics and pride now spoke with one voice. Resistance cells shared information across battered radios. Scientists collaborated in secret bunkers. Soldiers carried not their own flags, but one banner: humanity. Commander Daniel Hale stood before the assembled council, his weathered hands gripping the edge of the table. His voice was low, steady, but every word carried like a drumbeat. They believe they hold the sky. They believe their silence makes them gods. But they have forgotten what it means to be human, to fight with nothing, to rise from ashes, to turn despair into fire. We will remind them. On the wall behind him a plan glowed, the first true counteroffensive. Not a raid, not a symbol. A strike so bold that it would force the invaders to see humanity not as prey, but as the storm that would end them. The target, the alien command ship. The heart of the fleet. In a ruined factory repurposed as a workshop, Mira Chen bent over her creation. Circuits scavenged from alien wreckage pulsed with strange light, fused with human metal and wires. It was neither alien nor human. It was both, born of desperation and brilliance. Elena Rivers stood nearby, organizing supplies, soothing restless fighters, carrying hope like a flame in her hands. She watched Mira's exhausted figure, her fingers stained with grease and blood. "You need rest," Elena murmured. Mira shook her head. "Rest when it's finished. This will give us a chance. A weapon they can't predict." Elena knelt beside her, placing a gentle hand on Mira's arm. "You've already given us something greater than a weapon. You gave us belief." For the first time in days, Mira paused, her eyes softening. "Then let's make sure it's enough." The plan was simple in word, impossible in execution. Steal an alien vessel, use Mira's hybrid technology to disguise it, and ride it into the heart of the fleet. Strike not with power, but with unpredictability. Elena volunteered without hesitation. So did dozens of others. They knew the risk, but death had already touched their lives so many times that fear no longer held them. On the eve of the mission, Elena stood alone under the broken sky. She thought of Isaac, still missing, still silent. She whispered into the cold, "If you're alive, brother, know this, we're fighting for you, for all of us." When dawn came, it was no dawn at all. Smoke veiled the horizon. Cities still burned. Yet inside the captured alien transport, a small crew of humans strapped themselves into alien seats, staring at controls that glowed with unearthly symbols. Daniel Hale himself had come to see them off. His voice, rough with years of command, carried a quiet pride. History will not remember every name, but it will remember this day. You go not as soldiers of one nation, but as the guardians of every life on this planet. Whatever happens, you are already victory. Mira met his gaze. Then let's give them the last battle they never saw coming. The ship lifted from the earth, its engines humming with stolen alien fire. For a moment, silence filled the cabin. Only the sound of breath, the weight of fear and hope pressing down together. Elena reached out, finding Mira's hand. They clasped tightly, wordless but stronger for it. The stars opened before them, scattered and eternal, yet now filled with hostile metal shadows. The fleet loomed, rows upon rows, perfect and merciless. But among them, one ship carried something no machine could calculate: human will. The alien commanders registered the anomaly. A vessel rising without their order, moving with strange rhythms, signals twisted by chaos. They turned their attention toward it, analyzing, preparing to erase it. But they did not yet understand. Inside that stolen ship, humans braced for the impossible. They carried no promise of survival, only the certainty that if this was to be their end, it would be written in fire so bright it could never be erased. Elena's voice broke the silence, steady and unyielding. For every city, for every child, for every dream they tried to steal, we rise. And the ship surged forward, straight into the heart of the fleet. The stolen alien ship cut through the void. a fragile spark against the immensity of the fleet. Around it loomed colossal vessels, flawless in formation, each one bristling with silent power. The invaders had watched countless worlds crumble before them. They did not imagine this world would be any different. But inside that spark of a ship, Elena Rivers and her crew carried something stronger than weapons. They carried the stubborn, unyielding spirit of humanity. Mira Chen sat at the control panel, her fingers flying across alien glyphs, her hybrid device pulsing with unstable light. Sweat poured down her temples, but her voice was steady. "They're scanning us. I can hold the disguise for maybe 3 minutes. After that, they'll see through everything." Elena gripped the straps of her seat, her heart pounding like war drums. "Then 3 minutes is all we need." The plan was madness. Slip past the fleet's guard, reach the command ship, and plant Mira's device into its core. If it worked, the device would ripple through the fleet's network, infecting perfection with chaos. If it failed, Earth would fall in silence. On Earth, Commander Daniel Hale stood in the command center, eyes locked on the screens. No communication reached the stolen ship, but every sensor tracked it. He whispered to himself, almost a prayer, "Come on, humans. Show them who we are." All across the world, people listened to fragments of updates. Survivors huddled in shelters, soldiers paused in trenches, children pressed ears to radios. For the first time in history, every human heart beat in unison, waiting for one fragile ship in the stars. The alien command ship filled the viewport, vast, gleaming, more a floating city than a vessel. Its hull shimmered with shields that had never been breached. Mira's voice cracked. "This is it. Once we pierce their veil, they'll know we're here." Elena met her gaze, calm despite the storm in her chest. "Then let them know." Mira pressed the final sequence. The disguise shattered like glass. Instantly, alarms screamed through the alien fleet. Ships turned, weapons glowed, the sky itself seemed to burn. But too late. The humans had already dived straight into the heart of the beast. The command ship's hangar loomed open. Alien soldiers, tall and faceless, swarmed, their weapons glowing with deadly light. The humans charged anyway. Outnumbered, outgunned, yet unstoppable. Every bullet, every scream, every sacrifice was a declaration. "We are still here." Elena fought with a rifle in her hands, covering Mira as she carried the device. Around them, comrades fell. But still the group pushed forward step by step, blood and will carving a path where logic said none existed. At last, they reached the core chamber, an immense sphere pulsing with alien light, the heart of the fleet's mind. Mira staggered forward, clutching the device to her chest. "They'll never expect this," she gasped. Elena held the doorway, firing until her rifle clicked empty. "Do it, Mira." "For Earth!" Mira slammed the device into the core. Sparks erupted, light fractured, the chamber screamed with energy. The fleet above shuddered as order unraveled. Perfect formations broke. Ships collided. Weapons misfired. The invaders' silence shattered into chaos. But the backlash struck too. Energy flared, throwing Mira to the floor. Elena caught her, cradling her in her arms as the chamber collapsed around them. Mira's voice was faint, trembling. "Did it work?" Elena pressed her forehead against hers, tears streaking her face. "Yes, you lit the fire. You saved us all." Mira smiled, fragile but radiant. "Then humanity wins." Her eyes closed, her breath stilled, but her expression remained peaceful. Elena screamed, but even her grief was drowned by the roaring storm of the collapsing ship. From Earth, Daniel Hale watched in silence as the alien fleet tore itself apart. Ships fell from orbit like dying stars, crashing into oceans, deserts, and empty skies. The command ship itself fractured, a sun of fire against the black. The world erupted in cries of triumph. For the first time since the sky broke, humanity looked upward not with fear but with pride. Daniel's voice carried across every channel, steady and solemn. "Remember this day. Remember their names. We are alive because humans refuse to bow, and because of them we always will." In the wreckage of the command ship, Elena Rivers drifted in silence, a single survivor cradled in the hollow of destruction. Her body was battered, her soul torn, but her spirit blazed. She thought of Isaac, of Mira, of every face that had carried her here. She whispered into the void, words carried by no radio but burned into eternity itself. "We are human. Remember us," and the stars listened.